Welcome to Until All of Us Are Free, a year-long multimedia education project dedicated to Black liberation as collective liberation. I am your host and creator of this project, Ijeoma Oluwa. So this month, we're going to do things a little bit differently. Each month of this project, we're focusing on a different issue, both in the United States and around the world, and talking about how it relates to Black liberation in the United States. I think it's really good, as we are still in the early stages of this education project, to talk about what collective liberation is and some of the foundational tenets of it. And so for this month, instead of focusing on one issue, we're going to be focusing on these core issues pertaining to collective liberation so that you really have a strong foundation to work off of. I think right now, with everything that we're all going through politically and socially, I think that this base education that can be applied to so many different things that we are having to address right now will be really useful. First and foremost, we're going to talk about abolition. Abolition is absolutely critical and foundational to collective liberation. Now, I'm sure that you've heard people talk of abolition, or people identifying themselves as abolitionists, as I do, and it can still be hard to know what exactly we mean for that. So what does abolition mean? It can mean a lot of things. Words are flexible. Words can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So I'm going to describe abolitionism and abolition as I understand it and as I practice it in my life and in my work, in the same way in which many of my peers practice it as well. Abolition, the way in which I practice it and many of my peers practice it, has its roots in the abolition of slavery. And often, for many people across the United States, that's really where their education around abolition ends. We're taught in school that the abolitionists wanted to abolish slavery, and they did. Mission accomplished. All done. But slavery didn't end. Slavery was repurposed, reimagined into the prison industrial complex that we see today. And so the fight for abolition continues. The fight to end incarceration in all of its forms. That really is a continuation of chattel slavery. That is what abolitionists work towards. So I'm going to dive a little bit into my book here, because I did a lot of work writing about abolition in here. So when I write about abolition in this book, here's some of the things I say. Abolitionism recognizes that hierarchical systems of crime and punishment seek to control and exploit people in the model of chattel slavery, and that the majority of these systems are a continuation of this slavery. Abolitionism understands that wherever these exploitative and carceral systems are left standing, all people will be at risk for enslavement, and our society will be unable to adequately address issues of health and safety. Abolitionists envision a world that doesn't rely on punishment or control to address social issues. Abolitionists see the value of all people in ways that aren't defined by capitalist notions of productivity or profit. Abolitionists look to root causes of social issues and believe in collective responsibility for those issues. Basically, prison abolitionists believe in people. We believe in relationships and social contracts. We believe in our power to heal ourselves and one another. And we believe that people have the right to decide what's best for themselves, and that communities have the right to decide the same together. There is a little bit of what is abolition, what is abolitionism, especially when we're talking about prison abolitionism. What do abolitionists target? Abolitionists target our prison industrial complex, policing, the court system, juvenile detention systems. Basically, anywhere the state has decided it can incarcerate people for what it defines as wrongdoing. But abolitionists don't just target that. Abolitionists also target systems like forced mental health services, forced medical treatment. They also target child protective services, which often are incredibly racist, incredibly punitive, and target vulnerable people and vulnerable communities, and often punish families by removing children from the home. All of these systems do have roots in racism, in patriarchy, in hypercapitalism, and in slavery. The idea that there are certain people who get to decide whether others deserve to be in society is a patriarchal system that is filled with a lot of racism, a lot of ableism, and of course, capitalist ideas of productivity and whose worth is decided by that productivity. So how does this relate to collective liberation? Well, basically, as long as we believe that there are certain people who are worthy of being with us and certain people who are not, or that there are certain people who get to decide who gets freedom and who does not, we can't be free. Fundamental to collective liberation is the idea that we all deserve freedom from these systems. And we can't have systems pulling people out of our society, denying people that opportunity for liberation, while saying that we are a liberated society. Furthermore, because of the racist, sexist, ableist, classist roots of our carceral systems, as long as they exist, they will always work in service of our oppressors. As long as they exist, they will always target those that have traditionally been targeted by exploitative and oppressive systems. They will always work against us and our goals for liberation. When we're talking about our goals of collective liberation, I think it's pretty clear to see that abolitionism is vital to that. But when we fail to recognize that and fail to recognize what abolitionism looks like in our lives and in our movement work, we run risk of real harm to our movements. How does a lack of abolitionist focus harm collective liberation? One, it allows hierarchies to exist in our movements of who deserves to be heard, who's a part of our vision for the future, and who is not. Two, it allows areas for systems of oppression to hide and strengthen themselves. Think about how easily people are pulled away from different movements with scare tactics, with talk about crime, with talk about punishment. Think about how easily we are pulled into carceral behavior and carceral mindsets in order to turn against each other or to keep us too afraid of what might happen without these controls in order to continue our work. At the heart of carceral systems is the belief that there are certain people who simply cannot govern themselves and must be governed by others. So in that context, it's easy to see how these ideas are deeply racist, deeply sexist, incredibly ableist, and classist. When we don't recognize that as long as these harmful systems exist, we won't be free, it is easy for people to sell us reform instead of revolution. Think about how often we are told that police reform is really where it's at, or police reform is what we should settle for. But all that police reform does is really buy these harmful systems time. It buys them time to strengthen other areas of their oppression, buys them time to adjust to the reforms and find new ways to harm us. Often, reform ends up adding more funding into these very systems that are hurting us. The truth is, these systems have to go. We cannot be a punishment culture and be free at the same time. So that's an intro as to what abolitionism is. Over the next week, we're going to be sharing videos and documents about abolitionism. Make sure to check out the episode notes so that you can read more about this, get more resources. We're going to be talking about where carceral systems and carceral mentality lies in our heads and in our relationships and what to do about that. And we're going to talk about the future we really want and what we can do right now to get it. So make sure to stay tuned over the following week for more installments on this. And then we're going to move on to another topic in this Collective Liberation 101 series. If you find this work valuable, please please go to untilwearefree.com to become a paid subscriber. This project is self-funded and reader-funded, and I want to keep it as accessible as possible. So all of these posts are open and accessible to anyone who goes to the website and wants to look at it. But your support means that I can make the best possible content I can, and it helps me pay the people who are working with me. So thank you for your continued support, and I'll see you in a few days in our next installment.